Okay girls, today we are going to discuss, we are going to revise the chapter number 1 from the chapter number 1 from the book Geography. The first chapter is resource and the development. As we all have already discussed about the resource and development, you all know that resource is something that is having some benefit or that is having some usefulness. Everything that is available in our environment that can use to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, it is economically feasible, or it is culturally acceptable, is known as resource. So resource is something that we are getting from our environment that we can use to satisfy our needs. It is technologically accessible, it is economically feasible, and as well as it is culturally acceptable. So if we can see in an object, that object can fulfill our needs, that object is technologically accessible, the object is economically feasible as well as culturally acceptable, we are saying that it is a resource. Now in case of a resource, suppose an object that doesn't have any use or we don't know how to use that, so obviously that will be not considered as a resource. So resource is something that having some use. Now in case of the resource making process, there are basically three things are there which is very helpful for the resource making process. The three things are the physical environment, technology, and institution. Physical environment, technology, and institution, without these three things, it is impossible to form the resource or it is impossible to build or create the resource. Human being is always located at the center of this resource making triangle. This triangle shows the interrelation or the interaction between physical environment or the nature, technology, and the institution as a part of resource development. We the human being, we are taking or collecting the resource from the nature. The things whatever we are collecting from the nature, those things are the raw materials. And human being, with the help of the technology, with the help of the institutional power, they accelerate or they use this object or they convert this object into the usable thing. They convert the normal object into the resource and they accelerate their economic development. So always there is a question, what is the relationship between the physical environment, technology, and institution? There is an interrelation between physical environment, technology, and institution because these all three things are interrelated with each other in resource making process. Without a particular single thing, it is not possible the resource will be formed. And physical environment, we are collecting the resource. Those resources are in a raw form, so we need technology to convert it into the usable form. With the help of the technology and with the help of the institutional power, we can do this. But basically in case of the entire resource making process, human being is the most important part because human being only the creator of the resource, human being only the user of the resource, even human being is the destroyer of the resource also. Without human being, there is no need of the resource. So obviously in case of the resource making process, human being is an important part. The next thing that we are having, that is the classification of the resource. In case of the classification of the resource, resources are classified into two parts. These are the natural resource and the resources are classified into two parts. One is the natural resource and the second one is the human resource. Now natural resource means basically from the nature which resource we are collecting, that is called the natural resource. And human resource means this resource are created by the help of the human technology or the manpower. Now in case of the natural resource, we are going to read about the renewable, non-renewable, we are going to talk about the recyclable, non-recyclable, this kind of the resources. And in human resource means the human institutions, the quantity or the quality of the human being. Now in case of the classification of the resource, there are basically different ways of classifying the resource. On the basis of the life of the resource or on the basis of the we can say the living things and the non-living things. We are having two types of the resources, biotic resource and the abiotic resource. Biotic resource means we can say this is on the basis of the origin. On the basis of the origin, we have divided the resource into two parts. One is the biotic resource and another one is the abiotic resource. The meaning of the biotic resource, we are obtaining this kind of the resource from the biosphere, like life, human being, as well as flora and fauna. And the meaning of the abiotic resource is these things are composed of the non-living things, like the rocks as well as the metals. This all comes under the. Now, on the basis of the exhaustibility, we can divide the resource into two types. One is the renewable resource, another one is the non-renewable resource. Now, the meaning of the renewable resource is the resource which can be renewed with the time, and non-renewable means that doesn't renewed or that doesn't replenished actually. The renewable resources are called the replenishable resource, which can be renewed or reproduced by the physical, chemical or the mechanical process. Example, solar energy, water resources, forests, wildlife, these all are the renewable resource. And renewable resource can be called continuous resource or the flow resource also, because wind, water, this kind of the resources you will find always in our environment. There is a flow of this kind of the resources. Non-renewable resource. Non-renewable resource, it's those resources are not replenishable or they are taking a long period of the time to form. That's why it is called the non-renewable resource. Non-renewable resource can be recyclable, it can't be recyclable. Suppose the metals are recyclable resource, but it is non-renewable. Non-recyclable means fossil fuels which cannot be recycled. It get exhausted with its use only. So we can divide the resource into renewable as well as the non-renewable. And difference between the renewable and non-renewable, renewable resources are replenishable, non-renewable resources are not replenishable. In case of the renewable resources are eco-friendly, non-renewable resources are not eco-friendly. Renewable resource, we can say renewable resource is a flow resource or a continuous resource because it will be not exhausted. But with the use, non-renewable resource can be exhausted. Now the next base of the classification of the resource is that on the basis of the ownership. On the basis of the ownership, we are having four kind of the resource: individual, community, national and international resource. Now individual resource means these resources are totally under the property of some individual person only. This resource belongs to a individual people or privately owned resources by the individual. Suppose a farmer having a land, obviously that is the resource of that farmer. If whatever is our house, our car, these all are properties owned by us only. So this is called the individual resource. Community resource. Community resource are those resources which are accessible to all the members of the family. Suppose a grazing land is there in the village, a park is there in the village, a picnic spot is there in the village. So this is called the community resource that is owned by all the members of the community. Now after community resource, we are having the next type of the resource, that is national resource. This part of the national resource is very important because this resource belong to the nation. The roads, canals, railways, or suppose in case of the territorial water resources, this all belongs to the national resource. Now what is this territorial water resource? The term territorial water resource, it refers to the oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles from the coast. That means from the sea line or the coastline up to 12 nautical mile area, it's called the territorial water resource, and every country having the legal power to use or acquire the resource of this particular area. Every country having the power that they can use this 12 nautical mile area from the coast in the open ocean only. The next thing, international resource. International resources are regulated by the international institutions only. In case of the international resource, there is a term that is very important. It is called the EEZ. EEZ is exclusive economic zone. Exclusive economic zone means this is the area, oceanic area beyond 200 kilometers from the ocean only, and it is called the exclusive economic zone. It belongs to the open ocean, and no individual country can utilize the resource which is present in this area without the permission of the international institutions. In case of the India had obtained the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean, an area which is lie below beyond the exclusive economic zone. Now this could be added as an example that India had the permission to use this part. Now the next or the last classification is there, that is on the basis of the this is the example on the basis of the ownership. We have divided the resources: individual, it's house; community owned, it's a park; national, it is a railway; or international, that is the exclusive economic zone. The territorial sea zone, it belongs to 12 nautical mile from the sea only. After that 200 nautical mile, it belongs to the exclusive economic zone. And the last is the deep sea bed, that is the open sea we are saying. Now the next part that we are having on the basis of the development. Of the basis of the development, we are having 4 kinds of the resources. These resources are the potential resource, developed resource, stock, and the reserve. Now potential resource means these resources are observed or found in a region, but that have not been utilized. That means I know resource is present over there, but I haven't utilized those resources. It doesn't mean I don't have technology. I have the technology also. Example, in Gujarat and Rajasthan, the wind and solar energy is very developed, or they are this states of India having the potential to develop the wind and solar energy, but they are not that much developed. So this is called the potential resource. Developed resource, these resources are surveyed and determined for utilization, both the quality and the quantity. And development of the resource depends on the technology and the level of their feasibility. It means that we know the resources are there, resources are surveyed also, they know how to utilize it, they know how to use it, and they are using it. Development means I know the thing and I am using the thing also. Now the next part of the resource is their stock. Stock means in case of the some resources, those resources can satisfy the need of the human being, but we don't have appropriate technology to access these resources. Suppose for example, water, like it's compound of 2 gases, hydrogen and oxygen, we all know. But in case of we don't know technically how we can make the water. That is the meaning of the stock. I don't have the technological know-how, or I don't have the technology, that's why I can't access the thing. And the last one, that is the reserve resource. In case of the reserve resource, this is a subset of the stock which are yet to be put into the use with the help of the existing technical know-how. That means it is the rest of the part of the stock, we are keeping it for the future. That means we are reserving it. Example, river water. We know river water can use for hydroelectricity power generation, but we are using it in a limited manner. We will use it in the near future if it is required. So this is the meaning of the reserve resource. Now the next thing is there, that is the problems that is created by the indiscriminate use of the resources. If you will use resource indiscriminately, then there will be lots of problem created. Suppose obviously if I will use the resource indiscriminate way, many resources will get depleted, like the forest. You have seen the forest, number of the forest is decreasing day by day. Resources got accumulated in few people's hand only. Because of the lack of the resource in our society, there are 2 divisions occur, rich and the poor people. Poor people doesn't have the access to the resources, and rich people having all the access to the resources. As well as if we will use the resource indiscriminate way, not only the resource will finish, there will be some environmental problems also, like the global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental degradation, and other kind of the problem will be created. So that's why resource we have to utilize in a very optimum way, and huge amount of the problem will arise if we will not use the resource in a judicious way.